The drums of liberation were still echoing in their heads. The feast after Wano was wild, loud, and endless on the Thousand Sunny. Luffy was laughing in Gear 5, his white hair bouncing, his rubber body twisting reality itself as the crew replayed the battle with Kaido in their minds. He had just shaken an emperor, rattled the world government, and announced Nika's return to the entire world. Then the laughter stopped. No warning. No enemy ship. No admiral on the horizon. The moment he lifted his arm to grab another piece of meat, his body didn't stretch. His hand slipped. His smile froze. And then, in front of the entire crew, Monkey D. Luffy collapsed. His form seemed to deflate, that wild nika aura vanishing like smoke in the wind. No rubber recoil, no cartoon physics, no heartbeat drums, just silence. The first sign that something was wrong wasn't the fall. It was the sound, or rather the lack of it. No Gear 5 laughter shaking the deck, no absurd reality-bending tremors warping the wood beneath him. Chopper rushed in. Sanji shouted. Zoro's hand went to his swords. But when they grabbed Luffy's arm, it felt normal. Flesh. Bone, no stretch, no resistance. The strongest symbol of freedom in the world had lost his power. This wasn't a random curse or a side effect of awakening. The world government had finally pulled the trigger on a secret plan that had been building for 800 years. Somewhere in Mariéjois, a weapon, a ritual, or a Blackbeard-style extraction device had been activated the moment Wano ended. A precise strike across the sea that severed Luffy from the Hito Hito no Mi model, sure as Nika, and ripped that mythical zone out of his body without killing him. The crazy part was that they didn't even need to destroy him. They just needed to reclaim the fruit. But what if the most dangerous devil fruit in history suddenly re-entered the world, free from the boy who had just challenged the heavens? Just how much would that single event twist the race for Pirate King, the final war, and the very meaning of Joy Boy? In One Piece, when a devil fruit user dies, their ability is reborn into a nearby fruit. Here, that same rule is weaponized, turning the entire world into a new battlefield for Nika. Now imagine the timelines this breaks open. Luffy losing Nika right after Gear 5, with Yonko-level enemies already on edge. Luffy stripped of rubber at Marineford, charging into war with no devil fruit at all. Or even earlier, in East Blue, losing Gomu Gomu before Alabasta, before Enies Lobby, before Scipia. Every iconic moment, from ringing the Shandora bell to punching Crocodile into the bedrock, is suddenly up for destruction. This isn't just Luffy getting weaker. This is the entire power system, the Yonko balance, and the world government's 800-year plan being violently rewritten from the inside out. And in this universe, the question isn't who finds the One Piece first. It's who gets Nika next. Rules of the game. How can a devil fruit be lost? To make this universe work, the rules of the game have to be clear. If Luffy is losing Nika, how does that power actually leave his body, and what happens the moment it does? In One Piece, the general rule is simple. When a devil fruit user dies, their power disappears, then rebirths into a nearby fruit of the same type. We saw this with Smiley on Punk Hazard, and with the Mera Mera no Mi after Ace's death. The ability itself never truly dies. It just jumps bodies and waits for the next host. But what if someone doesn't want to wait for the user to die? Blackbeard's crew showed the first sign that this system can be hijacked. At Marineford, Teach literally pulled a curtain over Whitebeard's corpse, and when the cloth dropped, the Gura Gura no Mi was his. No visible rebirth fruit, no obvious ritual, just a stolen ability. Thanks to his new ability to manipulate darkness and pull in powers, Teach proved that controlled extraction is possible. The crazy part was that this shattered the idea that death is the only trigger. So for Luffy, there are 3 plausible loss mechanisms. The first is a Blackbeard-style extraction, using a special body or item that can trap Nika's power and force it out. Imagine Teach or another darkness-based user closing in after Wano, ripping the Hito Hito no Mi model, Nika straight out of Luffy on the battlefield. The second is a secret world government technology or ritual hidden in Mariéjois, designed over centuries specifically to separate mythical Zoans from their hosts. The moment he is captured, that device activates, and Nika is torn away. The third is the most brutal narratively, a self-sacrifice. Luffy willingly gives it up. A scenario where the only way to save his crew, or an entire island, is to let Nika leave his body and rebirth somewhere else. Just how much does a man of freedom sacrifice to protect other people's freedom? Nika is not a normal fruit. It is a mythical zoan with a will of its own, erased from history, renamed Gomu Gomu to hide it. For 800 years, the Gorosei and Imu have tried to keep this power away from a true liberator, using the world government's entire war machine to suppress even the idea of its awakening. This is the most hunted ability in existence, so here is the rule set for this timeline. Luffy survives the loss. His haki, his spirit, his scars, all remain. But every devil fruit property vanishes instantly. No rubber body, no gears, no Gear 5, no cartoon physics. Punches break his bones, bullets pierce, and the battlefield stops bending around his imagination. And that's where the stakes explode. Removing Nika from Luffy doesn't just nerf the future Pirate King, it frees the single most dangerous power in the world. The entire planet feels the tremors as Nika goes back on the market. Who grabs it first? Blackbeard, Imu, or some random pirate who has no idea what they just ate? Choosing the breaking points. 3 timelines of a fruitless Luffy. So instead of asking who grabs it first, the real question becomes this: when does Luffy lose it? Because the moment the timeline shifts decides just how much the world breaks. To map this out, there are 3 pressure points where removing Nika does maximum damage to the story and to the balance of power itself. Each one targets a different Luffy: Rookie, Rising Force, and near-endgame Liberator. Change the fruit at any other time, and the waves are big. Change it here, and the entire ocean of One Piece history starts to tilt. Timeline A begins in Fuchsia Village. Luffy never eats the Gomu Gomu no Mi on Shanks' ship, or loses it before he ever sets sail. No rubber body, no cartoon physics, no gear techniques. He leaves East Blue as a completely human fighter, relying only on raw talent, instinct, and willpower. The first sign of this divergence hits immediately. Buggy's cannonballs do not harmlessly bounce, Arlong's teeth do not crumble against rubber flesh, and Crocodile does not get humiliated by a blood-soaked Gatling in Alabasta. In this world, Luffy has to grow as a pure martial artist and hockey prodigy from day one. Can a non-rubber Luffy even survive Logtown's execution without Dragon's help? Does Scipia's bell still ring if Eneru's lightning is lethal instead of comedic? But what if Zoro's sword becomes the real symbol of the crew's offensive power, while Luffy slowly grinds his way up with nothing but grit? Timeline B rips the fruit away at Marineford, in the middle of the Paramount War, while the entire world watches. This is Luffy as a rising force, armed with Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd, charging through a battlefield of admirals and warlords. Then, at the peak of chaos, the fruit is stripped, whether through Blackbeard's extraction methods, a world government experiment, or a death and rebirth trick. Nika leaves him right as he reaches Ace. Ace's chains, Akanu's magma, Whitebeard's last stand, Blackbeard's rise to Yonko status. Every single piece of that climax depends on Luffy's ability to bend reality just enough to reach his brother. Remove the rubber, and suddenly Sengoku's Buddha shockwaves are not something he can tank. Just how much does that one loss rewrite the symbol of the Great Pirate Era itself? Timeline C strikes after Wano. This is current canon Luffy. Gear 5, full Nika awakening, advanced Conqueror's coding, fresh off defeating Kaido. Then, right before the final saga truly begins, Nika is ripped out of him. The Pirate King race shatters. The Joy Boy prophecy goes dark. Imu, the Gorosei, Blackbeard, Shanks, even Dragon feel the tremors as the strongest mythical Zoan in history goes back into circulation. Each of these points attacks a different version of Luffy and sends unique shockwaves through arcs like Alabasta, Dressrosa, and the coming final war. Rookie Luffy changes how his crew forms. Rising Luffy changes how the old era dies. Near endgame Luffy changes how the new era is born. And the crazy part was that Nika does not simply vanish in any of them. Thanks to his new ability to reincarnate, the fruit always comes back. Someone else can, and almost certainly will, inherit it. The only question is who. Next, each timeline gets torn open in detail. But the twist is this. In at least one of them, the new Nika user is not a pirate at all. East Blue without rubber. Can Luffy even set sail? So now the timeline snaps back to the very beginning, before Marineford, before Eni's lobby, before the Grand Line. Everything rests in a tiny village and a single forbidden fruit sitting on a bar counter. In canon, that moment defines Luffy's entire life. But what if the world government does not fail this time? The moment Shanks steals the Gomu Gomu no Mi. A Cypher Paul unit is already tracking the Red Hair Pirates. They raid the ship at night, seize the chests, and the fruit never reaches Fuchsia's bar. No silly bite, no rubber boy, no secret Nika awakening quietly taking root in a child. There is another, even darker version. The fruit does arrive, Luffy eats it, but government science catches up. A covert team reaches Fuchsia after hearing rumors of a strange rubber kid. Using extraction tech inspired by what Blackbeard's crew will one day perfect, they rip Nika's power out before it fully bonds. The first sign something is wrong is brutal. Luffy's body snapping back to normal with agonizing tremors. The rubber aura vanishing as if it had never existed. From that day on, Luffy's childhood changes completely. No bullet bouncing off his face to impress bandits. But there's no crazy stretching antics to make Makino laugh. He is not the indestructible local monster. He is just a stubborn, scrawny kid who keeps picking fights he should not win. The war in his world is internal. Without a devil fruit, he has to train his body the old-fashioned way, lifting rocks, throwing punches until his knuckles bleed, getting knocked out by real damage instead of cartoon impact. This turns Romance Dawn from playful into lethal. When Higuma grabs him, there is no rubber neck to shrug off blades. Luffy has to grab bottles, chairs, anything, swinging like a wild animal because a single stab can destroy his entire dream. The Sea King scene becomes terrifying. Shanks still loses his arm, but Luffy survives only by clinging to driftwood and sheer refusal to sink. Against Alvida, there is no casual iron mace to the head gag. Every swing can crush his ribs. He dodges, rolls in the dirt, throws sand in her eyes, and uses a rusted pipe as his only ability. This also reshapes how Zoro meets him. At Shell's Town, Luffy cannot melt bullets with rubber. He sneaks, cuts ropes, and takes hits that actually break skin. Zoro does not see a bizarre rubber man leading the charge. He sees a human being who is weak, bleeding, and still walking straight into the line of fire. Just how much deeper does that hit a swordsman who already decided to wager his life on strength alone? Early battles shift. Zoro and even Usopp carry more of the raw offensive burden, while Luffy becomes the reckless tactician who weaponizes terrain, timing, and pure will. Then Logtown arrives, and the execution platform becomes the first real fork in destiny. In canon, lightning strikes and feels like fate. Here, there is no rubber body to shrug off that divine attack. A lightning bolt to a normal human should destroy him on the spot. So does the storm still come? Does Dragon intervene more directly? Or does fate need a completely different miracle, another Nika vessel awakening somewhere else, to keep the future Pirate King alive? Because if it does not, this entire story ends in that rain-soaked plaza. Next, the timeline where Luffy loses Nika much later tears open, and the war for the strongest power in history moves from East Blue to the heart of the Grand Line. Rewriting East Blue arcs. A human captain in a superhuman sea. The war for the strongest power in history shifts to the weakest sea. But what if that weakest sea is where Luffy never had Nika to begin with, and has to survive as a fragile human in a superhuman world? The first sign of this new timeline hits in Orange Town. Buggy's circus isn't a joke anymore. Without rubber skin, Luffy can't laugh off cannon blasts or let knives bounce off his body. Every blade can destroy him, so instead of charging straight in, he fights like a street brawler on a battlefield full of glass. He dives behind wagons, uses broken flagpoles as staves, and forces Buggy's chopped pieces to chase him into tight alleys where they cannot fully spread out. Zoro becomes the real front line, carving through Buggy's crew, while Usopp's early sniping turns into vital cover fire. The crazy part was that Luffy's role shifts from reckless spearhead to chaotic commander, shouting orders, baiting Buggy into overextending, and winning through positioning instead of pure durability. Then, Syrup Village changes everything again. Kuro's claws are now instant death. Luffy cannot tank a single Shakushi pass, so the moment Kuro vanishes, Luffy is not trying to readjust his broken neck. He is already moving, watching the grass, listening for footfalls, calling out patterns for Zoro and Usopp. It turns into a three-man trap. Usopp's shots mark likely approach angles, Zoro guards Kaya, and Luffy uses a metal pipe to parry slashes instead of catching them with his face. Just how much more terrifying does Kuro feel when one mistake means the entire story ends on that hill? At the Baratie, the power scale spikes. Don Krieg's arsenal and Mihawk's presence would normally be buffered by Luffy's rubber body. Here, every explosion is lethal. Saitai, Luffy cannot anchor ships with stretched arms, cannot bounce bullets back, so he leans fully into disruption. He kicks powder barrels, cuts rigging, swings from masts to blind Krieg's men with sails. Sanji's kicks and Zoro's blades become the true monstrous front line, while Luffy treats the whole restaurant as a weapon, turning the battlefield itself against Krieg's army. Arlong Park becomes a horror zone. Arlong's jaws and underwater pressure are no longer gags. They are instant kill conditions. Luffy cannot let himself be bitten, cannot be pinned at the bottom of the pool. So Nami's liberation turns into a coordinated strike. Genzo and the villagers create diversions. Zoro and Sanji divide Arlong's officers, and Luffy focuses on breaking the map room, the tower, and Arlong's morale. He shouts, "Rallies!" and times attacks so Nami can land decisive blows without ever standing alone. Psychologically, this Luffy understands death from East Blue. Every fight teaches that one clean hit ends him. That pressure accelerates his obsession with training, with reading intent, with learning Haki long before Rayleigh. Thanks to his new ability to plan instead of just endure, the crew reaches Logue Town as a far tighter unit. But as they step into that rain-soaked city, one question hangs over everything. What happens when a fragile human captain meets Smoker, a Logia whose body is untouchable, in a world where Luffy has no devil fruit at all? Logue Town to Alabasta. Can a fruitless Luffy survive the Grand Line? Smoker hits like a reality check. One side is a human captain with no rubber, no Logia body, no get-out-of-jail-free durability. The other is a walking smoke storm who can erase distance and ignore punches. On this battlefield, the power gap looks fatal. The moment Smoker's Jita slams Luffy into the ground in that alley, there is no goofy rebound, no rubber body absorbing impact. Bones rattle. Air leaves his lungs. He throws a desperate punch, and it just passes through smoke. Just how much can stubbornness do when every attack literally phases through the enemy? In this version, the answer is simple. Not enough. So the story leans even harder on Dragon. In canon, a mysterious wind and a father's shadow were enough. Here, the Revolutionary Army's aura has to step onto the stage. A sudden pressure crushes the air, rain whips sideways, and Smoker's smoke body scatters under violent crosswinds. A cloaked figure appears between Jit and Captain, hand raised, Su controlling the storm like a quiet war god. The first sign that Luffy is not just some random East Blue rookie is that the strongest revolutionary alive personally tears open his execution route. At the plaza, Buggy's blade becomes a death sentence. Without rubber skin, that guillotine strike will destroy his neck. But what if the storm hits earlier, harder? Lightning cracks down before Buggy can finish the speech, blasting the scaffold apart. Or Zoro, seeing there is no way his captain survives a clean cut, launches himself through Marines and pirates alike, physically smashing the execution stand and dragging Luffy away, taking the slashes himself. The escape becomes less gag, more near-fatal war scene. Crossing Reverse Mountain, this Luffy is not the indestructible crash dummy. When the Going Merry slams into waves and walls, he bruises, he bleeds, he learns that reckless hits now have a real cost. At Whiskey Peak, that cost reshapes the crew's image. Luffy still brawls, but he cannot tank dozens of blades for fun. Zoro's massacre of the bounty hunters turns into the main event, the moment the entire underworld realizes this crew has a monster, and it is not the smiling captain. Then Alabasta turns into a pure strategy war. Against Crocodile, water still matters. But Luffy cannot rely on stretching, ballooning, or rubber gears. Every punch is close range, every miss is lethal. He has to fight through sandstorms by moving with Vivi, with Zoro and Sanji setting traps. with Usopp sniping water shots to pin Crocodile's body down for seconds at a time. The first sign of something beyond flesh is not a gear, but a raw, focused will that refuses to be pierced again after that first impalement in the desert. He stands back up, bleeding. Slower. Human. Yet Crocodile's composure finally cracks under that human refusing to stay down. So this Luffy survives Logtown and topples a warlord. But the crazy part was that it leaves a disturbing question hanging over the entire Grand Line. Is this really the future Pirate King the world fears? Or just a charismatic underdog whose legend can still be destroyed in the next sea ahead? Marineford. Divergence. Stealing Nika in the middle of a war. So to really feel how brutal the next divergence is, the story has to jump forward. Fast forward past Drum, Alabasta, Scipia, Enies Lobby, Sabaudi, Impel Down. Through every moment where Luffy's entire identity as a fighter is built on one thing, being rubber. On Sabaody, Gear 2 turns his blood into a jet engine. Gear 3 lets him smash a pacifista like a giant's hammer, and rubber resilience keeps his body from tearing apart under that insane pressure. In Impel Down, poison, blades, and blunt trauma bounce and bend off a body that should have died 10 times over. By the time he crashes Marineford, the entire battlefield has already seen what this power can do. Luffy is the rubber man who broke into the strongest prison in the world and then sprinted straight into a war. But what if this was exactly where everything was designed to be taken from him? The trigger moment comes when the chaos is at its absolute peak. Luffy has just reached the execution platform. Ace's chains are shattered, the crowd is screaming, the admirals are moving, and every Den Mushi across the world is locked onto that single image. The D who challenged the world, standing beside the Fire Fist. The moment he looks up, grins, and shouts Ace's name, the war should turn. Instead, something else activates. From the shadows of the plaza, a new presence moves. It could be Blackbeard's crew, rushing in earlier than canon with a stolen extraction method. It could be a hidden CPO unit finally revealing the contingency the Gorosei prepared for Nika. Or it could be a mysterious device, a coffin-shaped mechanism marked only with the world government's crest, slamming into the ground and unfolding around Luffy in a cage of light and darkness. For a heartbeat, the entire platform is swallowed. No sound, no tremors, just a pulsing sphere that devours sight. Then it collapses. Luffy staggers out, bleeding from his nose and mouth, coughing like his lungs are tearing. A bullet rips through his shoulder. A sword cuts his leg. His arm stretches for Ace on reflex and doesn't move an inch. That is the first sign. Gear 2 refuses to ignite. His heartbeat hammers, but there is no steam, no red aura, no jet black veins. Gear 3 inflates his arm for a second, then snaps back and leaves him shrunken and helpless, without the giant's fist that used to destroy battleships. His body is no longer rubber. Every attack that once bounced now breaks skin. But his haki and will do not vanish. Conqueror's haki still erupts unconsciously, knocking fodder flat. His resolve to reach Ace does not crack, even as pain finally hits him like a real human. Just how much more terrifying does that make the scene? Across the world, people watched the D who stormed Impel Down suddenly stripped of his power. The crazy part was that no one understands what they just saw. Did Blackbeard steal the fruit? Did the government capture Nika at last? Or did the strongest devil fruit in history simply vanish back into the world, ready to be awakened by someone far worse? And on that broken platform, as Marines and pirates alike hesitate, a new question hangs over the entire war. Without rubber, without Nika, what does Luffy have left to fight with now? A fruitless charge, saving Ace. Without rubber or gears. The answer comes faster than anyone on that platform is ready for. Luffy runs, no rubber, no gears, no god hidden in his heartbeat. Just a human body trying to sprint through an admiral's firing squad at the center of the strongest war in history. The moment he launches himself off that shattered execution stand, the entire battlefield shifts. Before, Gear 2 turned him into a blur that even vice admirals struggled to track. Now every step is visible. Every dodge is late. Every attack aimed at him is suddenly lethal. Aokiji's spears of ice, Kizaru's light bullets, Akainu's magma fists. Nothing can be bounced, twisted, or absorbed anymore. If anything connects, it will destroy him. So the whole front line changes in an instant. Ivankov rockets forward, face swelling into a massive death wink to blow incoming shells off course. Jinbe plants himself like a living shield, redirecting tidal waves of magma with Fishman Karate, turning Akainu's own power back against the ground to throw off his aim. Whitebeard's commanders, who once trusted Luffy to carve his own path, now close ranks around him like bodyguards around a royal flag. Luffy stops being the reckless brawler diving into every clash. He becomes the symbol that cannot fall. Every marine who targets him finds Marco's blue flames, Vista's blades, or Josu's diamond body in the way. Just how much pressure does that put on a single exhausted human who knows he can't protect himself anymore? And then the psychological hit lands. Mid-sprint, under the reign of Admiral-level power, Luffy reaches for Gear 2 out of pure habit. Nothing answers. No steam. No accelerated blood. No rubber to stretch or pump. For a split second, his mind blanks. If he trips now, if he hesitates, Ace dies in chains while he lies broken on the stones. He has every reason to collapse. He keeps running anyway. That choice, without any awakening, Tekterst without any supernatural cushion, is what turns this charge into something even more terrifying. Every tremor from Whitebeard's quakes threatens to knock him off his feet. Every shockwave that once would have slingshotted him forward now just hammers his ribs. But what if that raw, powerless stubbornness is exactly what drags the pirates back into motion? Reaching the platform is only half the problem. The cuffs are still there. In canon, Luffy's rubber, hockey, and sheer force smash through them. Here, his fists are just bone and flesh, so the rescue becomes a coordinated operation under fire. Mr. 3, shaking but focused, throws up wax keys and shields. Whitebeard times a localized quake, not to destroy the platform, but to stagger the guards and distort the air around the locks. Luffy and Ace move in perfect sync, using that tiny opening to pull free at the exact second the wax takes shape. The first sign it worked is the sound of metal hitting stone. Ace is free, but now both brothers are just human, breathing hard, surrounded by monsters whose abilities can erase them in an instant. And somewhere out there, in the smoke and blood, the stolen nika fruit sits unseen, ready to decide who controls the next era, who reaches it first. Whitebeard, Blackbeard, and the Loose God. Who claims Nika at Marineford? The answer comes from the one man on that battlefield who understands devil fruits as a hunting ground, not a miracle. Blackbeard. The moment Luffy's heart stops and the nika fruit slips back into the world, teaches darkness feels it. This is the same crew that walks into Impel Down with a plan and walks out with monsters. The same man who times Whitebeard's death to steal the Gura Gura no Mi in front of the entire world. But what if, in this timeline, he senses something even more valuable than the strongest paramecia pulsing through the tremors of war? He already knows how to extract a fruit from a corpse. Here, he doesn't even need a body. In the chaos of Whitebeard's quake aura, the reborn nika fruit flickers to a nearby crate of rations. A single, ordinary fruit suddenly becomes the most hunted object in history. Blackbeard's crew fans out. Darkness swallowing explosions, bullets, even stray magma. They are not looking for enemies anymore. They are looking for destiny. Just how much worse does Marineford get if Teach finds it first? Imagine Blackbeard staggering from Whitebeard's final quake. Broken ribs, blood in his mouth, but laughing as he bites into the nika fruit. The Gura Gura no Mi in one hand, the Hito Hito no Mi. Model, nika in the other. Darkness that nullifies powers, quakes that destroy the entire sea, and now a reality-warping, cartoon god form that turns his body into pure chaos. Gear 5 without Luffy's joy, without his moral compass, without any restraint. Thanks to his new ability, Blackbeard could fuse quake shockwaves with rubbery, impossible physics, slingshotting continental-level punches, bending space with darkness, then detonating it with Whitebeard's quakes. Liberation twisted into pure anarchy. The strongest man, the strongest fruit, and the most forbidden awakening, all in one pirate who only believes in his own era. But the world government has waited centuries for this fruit. Do they really let it slip? The first sign they were prepared is CPO already embedded among the Marines, masked agents moving while the admirals clash. As bodies fall and flags burn, a single agent quietly retrieves an unassuming fruit from a shattered supply cart and vanishes into a door-to-door portal or a waiting warship. No cheering, no announcement, just silence. From there, the nika fruit never sees the light of day. It is rushed to Mariejois, to Imu's shadowed garden. Either Imu consumes it and becomes an anti-Joy Boy, a weaponized sun god whose aura of liberation is chained to the empty throne, or a chosen vessel is raised from birth to be the government's controlled messiah. The world still gets a legend of Nika, but this time, the drums of liberation beat on command. And then there is the wild card that destroys every careful plan. Someone random gets hungry. A panicked marine hiding behind rubble. A pirate looting supplies. Kobe, shaking, desperate for strength to protect his friends, grabbing the nearest fruit without thinking as a kainu's magma closes in. One bite, and the entire prophecy of the world shifts around a nobody, because in all of these outcomes, Luffy survives Marineford. He breathes, he grieves, but he walks away as just a man. Somewhere else, though, a new Nika laughs, cries, or screams awake, with no Straw Hat crew, no East Blue ideals, and no promise that this liberation will save anyone. So who truly inherits the sun when the wrong person eats the dawn? The next part of this story shows how fast the world burns once that answer becomes real. Post-war Luffy. From rubber boy to pure hacky, Monster Luffy leaves Marineford without a god hiding in his shadow, and that changes everything about how he trains. No more secret sun god awakening waiting in his blood. No rubber tricks to fall back on. Just a bruised human body, a broken will, and one old legend who refuses to let that fire die. On Ruskana, Rayleigh's lesson plan is rewritten from the ground up. In canon, Luffy refines gears around his rubber body. Here, the first sign that this Luffy is different comes when Rayleigh tells him to attack, and Luffy's punch actually hurts his own hand. No recoil, no cartoon stretch, just bone on bone. So Rayleigh doesn't say, "Control your devil fruit." He says, "Control your spirit." From that moment, he drills observation, armament, and Conqueror's Haki as Luffy's entire combat identity, not an upgrade layered on top. Observation becomes his lifeline. Surrounded by island beasts that would have bounced off rubber skin before, Luffy now has to survive with pure timing. He learns to feel killing intent before claws move, to sidestep bullets he can no longer tank, to read muscle tension and breath the way snipers read wind. Instead of dodging because attacks bend around him, he dodges because the battlefield itself is screaming in his ears. Then Rayleigh turns his body into a weapon. Without stretch, Luffy evolves into a close-quarters martial artist. His footwork sharpens into something Soru-like, explosive bursts that rip through the ground as he appears in an enemy's blind spot. His stance tightens, hips driving short, brutal punches, elbows, and knees that break ribs instead of bouncing off. To replace lost reach, he picks up staffs and clubs, smashing through trees and monster skulls, while Rayleigh forces him to flow between bare-handed combos and weapon strikes without a single wasted motion. Armament Haki becomes his new rubber. He learns to coat his forearms, shins, and torso until bullets flatten and blades skid off blackened skin. Each session ends with Luffy coughing blood, but thanks to his new ability to harden and reinforce, his body endures impacts that should destroy him. His fists turn into pseudo-devil fruit weapons, cracking boulders and launching beasts without any supernatural bounce, only raw Haki density. And then there is his kingly will. Stripped of Nika, Conqueror's Haki rushes to fill the void. Rayleigh pushes him to project it like a blade, not just a roar. The crazy part was that Luffy, who once knocked out fodder by accident, now learns to aim that pressure at a single target, dropping a boss beast while its army stays conscious. The moment he fuses that will with his strikes, a primitive version of Conqueror's coding appears far earlier than in canon, turning each punch into a spiritual sledgehammer. So by Fishman, Island, and Punk Hazard, what stands before the world? A weaker captain, or something just different? He no longer bends lightning or shrugs off blunt force, but his haki tremors, his aura of pressure, and his close quarters brutality turn every room into a suffocating arena. Just how much does the story change when Luffy trades cartoon freedom for pure spiritual warfare? And what happens the first time this version of him meets a true monster from the New World? Alabasta, Skypiea, and Enies Lobby reforged. The Haki Route. So let's drop this Haki-forged Luffy back into the canon timeline and start bending the early Grand Line around him. No rubber, no cartoon safety net. Just raw will, half-formed Haki, and a body that actually breaks when it hits a wall. How does that change the entire pre-time skip battlefield? The first sign shows up in Alabasta. In the original story, water is the answer to Crocodile. Here, water is just a crutch that fails. The moment Luffy's fist passes harmlessly through sand again, something in him snaps. Not his bones, but his spirit pressure. His rage. His refusal to let Vivi's kingdom die condenses into a crude, blackened sheen along his forearms. It isn't full armament. It flickers and cracks, but it carries weight. When he swings this time, Crocodile's sand doesn't just disperse. It warps, compresses, and Luffy's knuckles slam into the real body hiding inside the desert. Blood flies. The battlefield shakes. Crocodile realizes he is no longer facing a reckless rubber boy, but an awakening monster whose will can touch even intangibles. That same invisible armor becomes the only reason Skypiea doesn't end in instant execution. Without rubber, Enel's lightning should erase Luffy on contact, and at first, it does. Every bolt tears skin, chars muscle, drops him to one knee. But what if God tier pressure is exactly what drags out Luffy's next evolution? Each time Enel declares judgment and brings down another thunder strike, Luffy's body reacts on its own. His conqueror's Haki flares, blowing away weaker priests. His arms darken again, a primitive shield. Lightning slams into him, but the impact dulls, diverted by a stubborn, growing aura. He still screams, still bleeds, but he keeps moving forward through the golden ruins, fists wrapped in will, not rubber. Enel doesn't lose to a natural counter. He loses to a human who refuses to bow to a self-proclaimed god. By Enies Lobby, that defiance has a shape. There is no rocket made of stretched limbs to launch him to the Tower of Justice. Instead, the crew weaponizes the environment. Luffy sprints along collapsing bridges, Saru-like bursts of speed tearing at his tendons as he pushes his body beyond its limits. Thanks to his new ability to coat his legs and spine in Haki, he survives impacts that should destroy him outright, turning each landing into a crater instead of a corpse. Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd still exist, but they hit different. No rubber ballooning, just blood flow overdrive and bone-shattering impact, reinforced by armament. When he clashes with Lucci, every exchange is lethal. A single Rockwogan to the chest can end him. A single Haki-driven jet Gatling can pulverize Lucci's ribs. The crazy part was that without rubber to soak damage, the fight becomes a true war of attrition. Observation, Alice. Haki flickers on as Luffy dodges finger pistols by instinct alone, seeing killing blows a heartbeat before they land. Now place that version of Luffy on the Tower of Justice balcony, standing in front of the flag. He is not bouncing. He is barely standing. His clothes are scorched from lightning months earlier, his arms spider-webbed with fractures from Lucci's strikes. When he orders Usopp to burn the world government symbol and declares war, the scene hits like a hammer. This isn't a joke about a rubber man picking a fight with gods. This is a bleeding human, shaking, whose only real power is the invisible pressure making everyone on the battlefield gasp for air. By the time the Straw Hats sail towards Sabaody, this Luffy feels less flashy but spiritually heavier. His aura is sharper, his conqueror's presence more suffocating. Yet one thing is still missing. There is no drumbeat of liberation, no hint of Nika's destiny. So what happens when this hardened? Haki First Captain collides with the New World's true monsters, and when the world finally realizes the lost devil fruit of legend is back on the market, Dressrosa and Whole Cake, can Haki alone replace? Gear 4. Dressrosa is where this Haki-forged captain hits his first real wall. Doflamingo is not just a Shichibukai, he is a walking spiderweb of strings, a man who turns the entire battlefield into his personal puppet stage. In canon, Gear 4's elasticity let Luffy bounce through that web and destroy the birdcage with brute force. But what if there is no rubber, no spring, no ballooned muscles to rely on? The moment this Luffy steps in, the fight stops being a cartoon slugfest and turns into a suffocating haki war. No bound man, no Kong gun. Just raw armament hardened to the limit and Conqueror's haki sharpened into a blade. Through every clash is tremors and shock waves instead of rubber recoil. Doflamingo's parasite threads try to catch his limbs, but advanced armament burns through them, coating his body like a dark, cracking aura. Just how much punishment can a human body take when it has no natural shock absorber? This is where Law's role explodes in importance. Without elasticity to break free from awakening strings, Luffy needs surgical openings. Law's room becomes the lifeline of the Alliance. Shambles pulls Luffy out of lethal threads at the last second. Mez and Gamma Knife tear at Doflamingo's insides, and every tiny stagger becomes a window for one more haki-infused punch. The Straw Hat Heart Alliance stops feeling like two captains sharing a goal and starts looking like a single two-headed weapon. Thanks to his new ability to read haki pressure, Luffy times his strikes with Law's spatial cuts, turning the sky over Dressrosa into a layered trap for the Heavenly Demon. The first sign that this path works is the finish. Instead of a giant rubber cannon, the final blow is a Conqueror's coated, internal damage punch that detonates haki inside Doflamingo's chest and sends him crashing down, threads unraveling like snapped nerves. The birdcage falls, but Luffy's body is wrecked. No bounce, no recovery, just scars. Then comes Whole Cake Island, where rubber tricks were Luffy's last line of defense. No Tankman to reflect Cracker's biscuit assault. No Snake Man to weave through Katakuri's mochi. On this battlefield, haki has to awaken in a different way. Pure perception. Luffy pushes observation until the future is not just flashes, but a continuous film he tears apart with willpower. Against Katakuri, the duel becomes mental warfare. Every dodge is predicted. Every feint is mirrored. The crazy part was that without rubber speed boosts, Luffy leans fully into timing, rhythm, and Conqueror's pressure, disrupting Katakuri's calm and forcing mistakes instead of outracing him. And looming over all of this is Big Mom herself. Without rubber insulation, a direct clash with her raw power would destroy him. So he shifts into a guerrilla commander. Hit and run haki bursts. Morale games. Sabotage. He lets Beg's fortress, Jinbei's resolve, and Sanji's infiltration carry the heavy load while he appears only at critical pressure points, punching through homies and shockwaves with condensed armament before vanishing again. By the end of Whole Cake, this Luffy feels less like a future sun god and more like the strongest pure haki specialist of his era. He has no devil fruit, no mythical awakening, yet his presence bends the battlefield. So the question becomes dangerous. Does a Luffy who mastered nothing but haki actually need a devil fruit to stand against a Yonko? And what happens when someone else finally awakens Nika instead? Post-Wano catastrophe. The day. Nika vanishes from the world. So the question becomes dangerous. Does a Luffy who mastered nothing but haki actually need a devil fruit to stand against a Yonko? And what happens when someone else finally awakens Nika instead? To answer that, the story has to snap back to the main timeline, right after Wano, right when the world finally sees the sun god for real. The first sign is the newspapers. Morgans blasts images of a white-haired Luffy laughing in the sky, thunderbolts in his hands, the very battlefield of Onigashima bending like rubber. The drums of liberation are no longer a myth. They're front-page reality. Across the entire world, people whisper Nika. The Marines don't whisper. They panic. In Mariejois, Imu stares at that photo, and the Gorosi realize their nightmare has a name again. Joy Boy has returned. From that moment, every secret weapon, every assassination plan, every hidden research project about devil fruits points at one target: Luffy, the strongest threat to the world government's control. But what if before the final war can even start, they actually succeed? It happens on a calm sea that feels wrong. The Sunny is gliding toward the next island, The crew relaxed for the first time since Wano. Then the sky goes black without clouds. A pressure falls over the ship like an invisible hand. This isn't a normal ambush. This is a surgical strike. Saturn descends with a distorted aura, or Blackbeard's fleet erupts from a darkness that swallows the horizon. There is no pre-battle banter, no warning. Just how much can be taken away in a single instant. The moment he reaches for Gear 5, everything breaks. 1 second, Luffy's heartbeat is climbing toward that familiar, cartoonish rhythm. The next, the drums just stop. Mid-beat. No echo, no fade out. His hair drains from white back to black. His skin loses that surreal elasticity, and his body crashes to the deck like dead weight. He tries again, forcing his will, calling to that wild, laughing presence inside his chest. Nothing answers. The horror isn't loud, it's quiet. His heartbeat is normal. Too normal. For a man who became a legend by defying logic, by turning the battlefield itself into a joke, there is suddenly no joke, no rubber, no god. Just a human. Zoro's hand is already on his sword, eyes locked on Saturn or Blackbeard as if sheer killing intent can drag Nika back. Sanji explodes forward in rage, blue flames tearing grooves into the deck. Nami's hands shake around the Klimattact as she realizes the symbol of liberation has been stripped of the very power that made tyrants tremble. Robin's expression hardens. She's read the Void Century echoes. Joy Boy's aura is gone, but the story isn't. Because the crazy part was that the world doesn't calm down when Joy Boy falls. It gets worse. Newspapers scream that the sun god has been destroyed, that the strongest hope against the celestial dragons has vanished. But the truth is far more terrifying. Nika's power is loose again, whether extracted like Blackbeard's experiments or forced to rebirth into a waiting fruit. That mythical awakening is back on the market. And now a new race begins. Who claims the drums of liberation next? The world government, Blackbeard, or someone even more dangerous? Emu, Blackbeard, or a new Joy Boy? Who becomes the next Nika? That race is what breaks the world. Because the moment Nika's power is loose, every monster who feared that fruit stops hiding and starts hunting. And the first name that rises from the shadows is the one no one was ever supposed to see. Emu. Emu taking Nika is the ultimate blasphemy. An 800-year ghost ruler, a living void in history wearing the form of the sun god. The symbol that once made slaves laugh in chains would now walk as the strongest tyrant in existence. Instead of drums of liberation, the entire world would feel tremors of obedience. Thanks to his new ability, Emu could turn that cartoonish freedom into a nightmare, stretching palaces, bending cities, and reshaping the battlefield so that every rebellion literally snaps back into the hands of the throne. The first sign of this twisted awakening would be in Mariejois itself. Imagine the Holy Land warping like rubber, swallowing revolutions, bouncing back cannon fire, and turning the Red Line into a living shield. The sun god's smile becomes a mask of control. Joy Boy's promise is not just delayed, it is erased. Because if the world government's invisible king walks as Nika, then the story written on the poneglyphs is officially dead. But what if the fruit falls into the hands of the man who already breaks every rule? Blackbeard with Nika is not a joke. It is an extinction event. Yami to nullify, Gura to destroy, and Nika to distort reality itself. Just how much chaos can one body contain? The moment he stacks all three, the battlefield stops being a place and becomes his personal playground of darkness, quakes, and cartoon physics. Picture Marineford-level tremors fused with Gear 5 insanity. Blackbeard turning the sea into a rubbery abyss that swallows fleets, compressing islands with quake-coated fists, then canceling any counterattack with darkness. His liberation would be piracy unchained. No ideals, no justice, only the freedom to plunder everything. The crazy part was that this version of Nika still technically frees people. By freeing them from laws, nations, and even the ground under their feet. And yet, the most dangerous outcome is the one no emperor predicts. The fruit could reappear in the hands of a wild card, a terrified slave in Mariejois biting into it during a culling. Kobe, the earnest marine, forced to decide whether liberation means betraying the uniform. Vivi, a former princess, awakening the drums not for pirates, but for kingdoms. In each case, the power explodes in a direction the entire system cannot control. This is where the philosophy cuts deepest. If someone else becomes Nika, was Joy Boy ever about Luffy specifically? Or was he just the latest person willing to carry that will of liberation, the next torchbearer in a chain that started long before Fuchsia Village and will not end at Laugh Tale? As the world tears itself apart chasing the reborn fruit, one fact remains. Luffy is still alive, still captain. But for the first time since East Blue, he is completely, utterly human. And when the final war begins without a god on his side, what does a human Luffy have left that even Nika cannot replace? Straw Hat Dynamics, without a rubber captain. What happens to a crew built around a rubber storm? When the storm disappears and only the man remains. The moment Luffy loses Nika, the Straw Hats are forced into the harshest kind of awakening. A complete rewrite of how they fight, move, and even believe. The first sign is Zoro. In every timeline, once Luffy can no longer let bullets sink into his chest or shrug off blunt force, Zoro's role doesn't just grow as it spikes. He becomes the undisputed frontline, the shield, and the executioner in one body. At Enies Lobby without rubber, it is Zoro who plants himself between Luffy and Lucci's onslaught, taking Rokuogan-level punishment so the captain can focus on precise Haki-infused blows instead of reckless charges. In the final war, Zoro's aura of killing intent functions like a moving fortress, dragging enemy attention away from the human at the center of it all. Sanji and Jinbe shift next. Their power was always mobility plus durability, but what if that entire ability set is redirected into pure protection? At Marineford in this scenario, Sanji doesn't just dart through the battlefield kicking Marines. He's intercepting Kizaru's lasers, dragging Luffy out of firing lines, burning through the air to keep the captain breathing. Jinbe, who once carried a rubber body through a magma punch, now treats Luffy as something far more fragile. During the final war, he becomes a living bulwark, absorbing shockwaves and tidal assaults that would simply destroy a human ribcage. Without rubber chaos to open gaps, the backline has to become terrifyingly efficient. Nami, Usopp, and Frankie lean so hard into tactics that the entire crew starts to feel like a war unit instead of a pirate gang. In Alabasta, Nami's weather work stops being support and becomes battlefield control, turning Baroque works into blind, slipping targets for a captain who can no longer slingshot himself through cannon fire. Usopp's sniping and psychological warfare create fake tremors of fear, breaking formations before Luffy ever steps in. By the time of the final war, Frankie's tech is calibrated around one thing: extending Luffy's reach and defense without ever turning him into a stationary target. The Robin and Brook complete the net. Robin's information warfare, clone scouts, and instant limb locks create assassination-style openings that a purely human Luffy can exploit with haki and martial skill. Brook's soul-based abilities, ice and sound, become timing weapons, freezing a Yonko commander's feet for a single heartbeat, just enough for Luffy's coded punch to land. Thanks to his new ability to rely only on haki and fists, every opening they create feels sharper, more deliberate, more final. But the crazy part was that the biggest change isn't physical at all. Emotionally, the crew faces a question sharper than any blade. Do they still follow a man who lost the strongest fruit on the sea? In East Blue, they choose the kid who smiles in a storm, not the rubber. After Wano, when the entire world screams that Nika is gone and the balance of power is broken, their answer becomes the core of the final war. They double down. If Luffy can chase the Pirate King's throne with nothing but haki, scars, and will, then what excuse does the rest of the world have? And as their formation tightens around a mortal captain, another question rises from the horizon. How does a human Luffy now reshape the powers hunting the empty Nika fruit itself? Yonko and Marines. React. A world without rubber. Joy Boy. The powers hunting that fruit do not hesitate. The moment Nika leaves Luffy's body and the devil fruit's aura slips back into the world, the balance of power doesn't just tilt, it shatters. What happens when the strongest hope of one era becomes the most wanted object of the next? Blackbeard reacts first. Mkshirfwan? Of course he does. This is the man who waited decades for one specific fruit. But what if the very concept of freedom itself suddenly became unclaimed again? For Teach, Nika's rebirth is the ultimate jackpot, A once-in-history awakening of opportunity. Orders rip through Hachinosu. Every Titanic captain moves. Shiryu stalking rumor networks, Lafitte charming informants, Burgess sniffing out any unexplained shock of laughter or sun-like aura across the seas. Thanks to his new ability to steal and manipulate devil fruits, Teach doesn't see a chase. He sees a harvest. If the fruit appears at a random port, he wants the entire battlefield around it to already belong to him. Shanks feels it in reverse. The first sign for him is not greed, but failure. The fruit he once guarded, the secret he gambled an arm on in Fuchsia, is loose again. Does he rush to shield a powerless Luffy from the predators now circling him? Does he sail toward the next suspected Nika host to prevent another tragedy? Or does he finally step out of the shadows and spell out the truth of Joy Boy, the sun god, and why this power was never meant to be a simple rubber trick? Just how much longer can Shanks play the quiet guardian when the entire world starts hunting the same legend he once smuggled under their noses? On the Marine side, the reaction fractures instantly. Some officers celebrate. To them, the war against the 5th Yonko just got easier. No Gear 5, no cartoon god laughing in their faces, no more battlefield tremors of liberation. But at the highest level, the panic is worse than Marineford. Akainu understands that a nerfed Luffy is nothing compared to Blackbeard with Nika, or an unknown pirate awakening that ability from scratch. Secret directives fly from Mary-Joie. Sword, Kobe, and a handful of trusted agents receive a single mission: locate the fruit's new incarnation, secure it before anyone else, and if necessary, destroy its user before an awakening ever happens. Far away, Dragon watches a different kind of disaster. The Revolutionary Army just lost Joy Boy's power from their side. The symbol that could turn entire kingdoms with one smile is now human, mortal, and targetable. Does Dragon shift to protecting Luffy as a pure idea, a man who challenges the world with no divine crutch? Or does he begin quietly searching for the next potential Nika inheritor? Someone whose awakening could still shatter the Celestial Dragon's rule in one final war? The crazy part was that for the first time in centuries, every major force shares one objective. Yonko, Marines, world government, revolutionaries, even bounty hunters and warlord remnants. Control Nika, destroy Nika, or become Nika. The seas turn into a powder keg where any village fruit stand could secretly host the strongest ability in history. And right in the middle, stripped of rubber and divinity, stands Luffy, armed with nothing but haki, scars, and a name that now attracts the entire world's guns. As the hunt for the empty fruit spirals out of control, one more question rises. When the next Nika finally awakens, will it laugh with Luffy or against him? Final War without Gear 5. Can Haki Luffy still win? That's the world the story walks into now. The strongest ability in history back on the board, and Luffy standing there with nothing but haki and a legend. But what if that actually makes the final war even more terrifying? Without Nika, Luffy's entire ceiling shifts from rubber tricks to pure spiritual pressure. The question stops being, how broken is Gear 5? And becomes, just how much can one man's haki evolve when it has to replace a god? The awakening this time is not a fruit. It is Luffy's will itself. The moment his devil fruit is gone, every hour of training, every near death, every clash with Kaido and Katakuri gets forced into one path: Conqueror's haki. Luffy pushes coding to the point where his aura alone creates tremors in the air, where touching him without haki feels like slamming into an invisible wall. Internal destruction. Armament stops being a technique and becomes his default punch, shredding magma, steel, and even pacifista cores from the inside. His observation stretches so far that entire fleets move in slow motion to him, and future sight becomes a constant hum in the back of his mind. On the battlefield, that changes his role completely. No more reality-bending cartoon god bouncing lightning like a joke. Instead, the final war turns Luffy into the strongest frontline brawler and the loudest commander. He is the one whose roar of conquerors knocks out entire battalions, whose presence stitches together Yonko remnants, former warlords, and revolutionary armies into a single, moving strike force. When the war for the world starts, Luffy is not the miracle. He is the rally point. That also means every major matchup becomes far more brutal and grounded. Luffy versus Akainu turns into a pure hockey stress test. Magma fists meeting invisible shockwaves that destroy the impact point before it reaches his skin, each clash exploding the battlefield around them. Against Blackbeard, the fight becomes will versus gravity, with Teach's darkness swallowing abilities but failing to smother Raw Conqueror's pressure driving straight into his jaw. And against Imu, there is no Toon Force to laugh off reality. There is only a king's haki slamming into whatever ancient power rules the empty throne. The first sign that the mythic gap left by Nika is not a weakness comes when the new Nika user finally appears. Thanks to his new ability, this successor can twist the battlefield with the same ridiculous freedom Luffy once had, turning the entire war into a clash of interpretations. Liberation as joy and chaos versus liberation as responsibility and choice. Does that godlike freedom stand beside Luffy or stand in his way? Because here is the real tension. If Luffy topples the world government with nothing but haki, allies, and inherited will, does that make him a greater pirate king than the canon version ever was? If the man without the fruit is still the strongest threat to the celestial dragons, then what does that say about everyone still chasing devil fruits as shortcuts to power? As the final tremors of that question spread across the world, one last mystery waits in the shadows of Mariéjois. What secret weapon has the world government been hiding for the day Nika falls silent? Joy Boy, without Nika, redefining destiny and inherited will. The moment Nika falls silent, the world thinks the story is over. The weapon in Mariéjois is ready, the god of liberation is gone, the prophecy is broken. But what if that is exactly when the real meaning of Joy Boy finally comes into focus? Joy Boy has always been treated like a singular legend, a destined savior carved into poneglyphs and whispered about for centuries. Yet, this loss forces a brutal question. Was Joy Boy ever a specific person at all, or just a title that clings to whoever carries the strongest will to free others? If Nika's fruit leaves Luffy and awakens in someone else, then the chosen one idea shatters on the spot. In this timeline, the first sign that destiny is not a straight line is simple. Luffy keeps moving. No rubber, no Gear 5. No cartoon god aura bending the entire battlefield. Just haki, scars, and a refusal to stay down. While the world hunts for the new Nika, Luffy is already back on the sea, challenging Yonko, clashing with admirals, and throwing himself into the final war with nothing but his own ability to stand up again and again. That is where his role changes. If someone else becomes Nika, Luffy stops being the miracle and becomes the proof. He turns into the man who showed the world that you do not need a god fruit to punch a celestial dragon, to invade Enies lobby, to ring the bell in Scipia, to topple tyrants from Alabasta to Wano. Just how much more terrifying is that to the world government than a single mythical zone? Inherited will gets rewritten. Before it looked like power being passed down. Roger's hat, Joy Boy's fruit. The D carried like a secret badge. Now, Luffy's legacy is not a devil fruit at all. It is courage. It is the memory of a captain who lost everything the world called strongest, and still charged Imu's throne. Thanks to his new ability to inspire without any divine backing, the next Nika user does not inherit a script. They inherit a standard. This is where the D clan's mystery snaps into focus. Losing Nika strips away the illusion that the letter guarantees special powers. What remains is defiance, laughter in the face of certain death, the will to smile on a Marineford scaffold, in a burning Ohara, or under a falling Onigashima, even when every advantage is gone. The crazy part was that the world realizes the D never needed Nika to destroy the old order. Nika needed the D to move at all. By the end of this what if, Luffy becomes the purest symbol of One Piece's core message. Dreams and will crush bloodlines, prophecies, and powers every single time. If the fruit can leave him, but his impact keeps spreading like invisible tremors through every new pirate, revolutionary, and king, then who is the real Joy Boy now? And who will the world follow when the final war finally begins? 3 timelines, 3 legends, comparing Luffy's paths. So now there are 3 Luffys standing on 3 different battlefields, and each one proves a different truth about power. But which version actually terrifies the world government the most? Timeline A is the rawest. Luffy loses the fruit in East Blue, long before anyone whispers the word Nika. The moment he realizes his punches don't stretch anymore, he is forced to become a grounded underdog captain. He trains his body like a weapon, hammers basic Heiki out of sheer necessity, and leans on Zoro, Sanji, and Nami for every impossible stunt that Rubber used to solve. The first sign of his new path is how he approaches Arlong Park or Alabasta. Less reckless, diving into attacks, more coordinated assaults, more trust in his crew's unique abilities. This version of Luffy grows tactical because he has to. No Gear Second shortcuts, no Gear Third finishers, just observation, timing, and improvised weapons. Enies Lobby becomes a Houki awakening story, not a Gear debut. He is more vulnerable, more breakable, but the crazy part was that this only sharpens his leadership. Enemies underestimate the fruitless captain, and that mistake destroys them. Marines watch a human with no devil fruit keep winning and quietly realize that this will is harder to erase than any ability. Timeline B is much harsher. Luffy charges into Marineford with Rubber, with Gears, with Hope, and loses everything on the same day. Ace dies. The Nika fruit is ripped from his body in front of the entire world. That public humiliation brands Marineford as the war where not just a brother, but a god's awakening was stolen. Just how much does that reshape him after the time skip? He disappears for 2 years and comes back as a hardened Haki monster. Every scar from Impel Down and Marineford turns into training fuel. Thanks to his new ability to weaponize advanced armament and Conqueror's coating, his fists hit like invisible quakes even without Rubber. The moment he steps back onto Sabaody, the aura around him is different, less goofy, more dangerous, like a walking battlefield tremor. This Luffy is trauma-forged. He hates the symbol the fruit represented and proves that his spirit alone can rival the strongest monsters of the sea. Then, there is Timeline C, the cruelest twist. Luffy climbs all the way to Joy Boy, unlocks Gear 5, laughs in the face of Kaido's despair, and then loses Nika right after Wano, on the eve of the final saga. But what if the world government finally got what they wanted at the exact moment he became the freest man on the seas? Here, the entire world has already seen the drumbeat of liberation. They watched a white-haired god bounce lightning and magma like toys. When that power is stripped away, the Yonko, Marines, and revolutionaries all react differently. The Gorosei breathe for the first time in years. Blackbeard hunts the reborn fruit, and Dragon stares at the headlines and realizes something terrifying. Luffy's name still shakes the world, even when his body is normal. So which Luffy is actually the most dangerous? The grounded underdog who proves anyone can rise? The Marineford survivor who turns trauma into pure Haki destruction? Or the ex-Joy Boy who already broke the ceiling once and refuses to stay down? Because from the world government's perspective, the devil fruit was supposed to be the problem. What if the real threat was the human who kept winning without it? And if that's true, then what happens when these 3 legends collide with the same final enemy? Power fantasy versus human grit. Which story hits harder? And this is where the question really hits. Which Luffy actually feels stronger? On one side, there is Gear 5. The moment he awakens Nika, the entire story bends. Physics turns into a joke. The battlefield becomes a white canvas, and Luffy paints on it with pure insanity. He grabs lightning, bounces reality, turns the ground into rubber, and weaponizes laughter against a world built on fear. In a sea ruled by execution platforms and buster calls, he answers with drum beats and cartoon tremors. That power fantasy is real. It is liberation as an ability. Watching a slave bloodline, hunted for centuries, suddenly rewrite the rules in front of the strongest tyrants in history hits a mythic nerve. Gear 5 Luffy is not just winning fights, he is destroying the very aura of the world government. When he turns Kaido's apocalypse into slapstick, the audience sees a god of joy crash a war of gods. But what if the fruitless timelines cut all of that away? No rubber, no Nika, no divine awakening. Every punch breaks bone. Every bullet can destroy a dream. Luffy still charges Enies lobby, still sprints through Marineford, still stands on Onigashima, but now there is no safety net. No balloon body to tank magma. No goofy rebound from death. Only hockey, training, and a human body that bleeds. Suddenly, the same scenes feel heavier. A pistol aimed at his head in Logtown is not a gag. It is a coin flip on the entire era. Clashing with Kaido without Gear 5 becomes a war of willpower and timing, not destiny. Just how much more earned does it feel when a mortal, not a myth, forces the Emperor of the Sea to his knees using nothing but Conqueror's coding and stubbornness? This is where audience identification splits. Some viewers want the chosen one, the sun god who was always meant to rise, the legend that Shanks bet the new age on. Others feel a different pull. A Luffy without Nika leans hard into the idea that anyone can rise. He is not the reincarnated answer to an ancient prophecy. He is a kid from Fuchsia Village who keeps getting up until the world cracks. Pattern interrupt. What if that actually fits Oda's oldest themes better? From the start, One Piece has balanced absurdity with sincerity. Rubber gags and crying giants, talking reindeer and genocide. Gear 5 pushes the absurdity to its peak. Removing Nika tilts the scale toward raw grit, but the crazy part was that it also risks losing the singular magic of watching a literal cartoon punch a fascist dragon out of the sky. In the end, neither version is wrong. One is myth, one is struggle. And thanks to his new ability in canon, we see how carefully Luffy's journey is tuned. Pull one devil fruit out of place, and the entire world starts shaking. So if the story is this fragile, what happens when the final war starts and the other devil fruits at the top of the world begin to fall out of line too? If the rubber broke, what this changes for One Piece's endgame. So if the story is this fragile, what happens when the rubber itself breaks? Not just bent, not just pushed to its limit, gone. The moment Luffy loses Nika, the series doesn't just change fights, it rewrites the entire endgame. Structurally, the Grand Line turns into a different kind of war. East Blue stops being a goofy rubber showcase and becomes a bare-knuckle survival story. Buggy's cannonballs, Arlong's teeth, Crocodile's sand blades in Alabasta, every hit is lethal because there is no rubber skin to soften the blows. Just how much more brutal does Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, or Scipia feel when the main character can actually be skewered, crushed, or fried by Enel's lightning without a safety net? Then, Marineford flips from a power-up spectacle into a public execution of Luffy's status. Imagine the whole world watching as the next Roger dives into the battlefield and has his devil fruit stripped, shattered, or stolen in front of everyone. That isn't just a loss of ability. That is a live broadcast depowering that tells pirates, marines, and revolutionaries that even a god fruit can be taken. The first sign that the old rules of the sea are over is not a new awakening, but the destruction of one. From that moment on, post-Wano becomes a race, not for the One Piece alone, but for the reborn Nika fruit, Yonko Cruz, Sword, CPO, Blackbeard, and Dragon all start hunting the same invisible prize. The Gomu Gomu no Mi turns back into the single most contested object on the entire planet. Every port, every black market, every underground broker becomes a potential battlefield because any random child biting into the wrong snack could become the strongest weapon in history. Politically, the tremors run even deeper. Big Mom's collection plans, Kaido's Great War fantasy, Shanks' quiet negotiations, and Imu's secret purges all have to reorient around a free Nika. Thanks to his new ability in canon, Luffy forced the Gorosei to move in the open. In this timeline, they are forced to move because someone else might get that fruit first. But what if Blackbeard's darkness extracts it? What if a celestial dragon claims it? What if a revolutionary soldier awakens it on the front lines? Revisiting each major arc under this lens, the symbol of Nika and the human named Luffy split apart. In Alabasta and Dressrosa, Luffy is already a symbol of rebellion, but without rubber, he has to win through pure haki, grit, and alliances. In Enies lobby, Gear 2 and Gear 3 don't feel like flashy upgrades. They feel like a desperate attempt to keep up with a world that expects miracles from a mortal. In Whole Cake and Wano, the question becomes cruel. Is the world afraid of the fruit, or of the man who keeps walking forward without it? That is the core idea. Removing Nika doesn't remove the threat. It exposes what was always there. A pirate who can walk into any island, shatter its chains, and convince the oppressed to laugh in the face of gods. The crazy part was that the world government feared the fruit, but the real danger was the one person who proved you do not need god power to start an era. So which timeline terrifies Mariéjois more? The rubber god they know, or the human they cannot predict? Whose hands do you place the nightmare Nika inheritance into? And if you were sitting in that empty throne room, which version of Luffy would you be praying never walks through the Holy Land's gates next? Your turn. Which Luffy breaks the world the most? So now it is the viewer's turn to sit on that empty throne for a second and pass judgment. If this world had to keep only one of these timelines, which one would actually scare you more? A Blackbeard who steals the full Nika awakening and turns the entire sea into a darkness and sun god battlefield? An Emu who locks Nika inside the Holy Land and uses that power as a quiet, eternal executioner? Or the most unpredictable option of all, a Luffy who wins the Pirate King race with no devil fruit, no rubber, nothing but haki and stubbornness? Think about Marineford first. Picture Ace on the platform, the admirals closing in, the tremors of Whitebeard's last stand already shaking the bay. But what if the rubber boy charging through that war had no rubber at all? Does a fruitless Luffy still punch through the executioners with raw haki, or does the entire war collapse without Gear 2, Gear 3, and that insane durability? In the comments, rewrite that arc. Who lives? Who dies? And who walks away with the strongest aura on that battlefield when Nika never shows up? Then move forward. Dressrosa without rubber whips, or Bound Man. Just how much does that change the way Doflamingo's strings control the entire country? Does a haki-only Luffy break the birdcage faster? Or does someone else have to step up because his ability ceiling is lower without Gear 4? And in Wano, does a fruitless Luffy actually become a more terrifying Kaido Slayer, relying on pure advanced conqueror's haki? Or does the war against the beast pirates drag out until the island is completely destroyed? There is another question that refuses to go away. If Luffy never awakens Nika, who should inherit that nightmare fruit instead? Blackbeard, already hunting the strongest abilities in the world? Emu, turning the sun god into a chained weapon? Or an unexpected wildcard like Kid, Law, or even Garp in some twisted transfer at the end of a war? Drop the name that, to you, turns Nika into the most dangerous existence on the entire sea. For the power-scaling addicts, this is where the real battle starts. Is a haki-only Luffy, forced from East Blue to Wano to train every inch of his body and spirit, actually stronger long-term than Gear 5's cartoon god? Which version feels more like a true Pirate King, the reality-bending trickster, or the human who proves that no devil fruit awakening is required to rival the Yonko and topple empires? If this kind of timeline surgery is your thing, then the next wars are already lined up. What happens in a universe where Blackbeard eats Nika first, and uses darkness and liberation in the same body? Dat is preter swerp. How different does the entire story feel if Zoro gets a mythical zone and turns his three-sword style into a dragon god technique? Those what-ifs are waiting, because at the end of the day, devil fruits can be stolen, empires can fall, and even gods can be erased from history. But the one thing this world can never take away is a stubborn idiot who refuses to give up. Decide which Luffy breaks the world the most, and say which one you would fear meeting on the battlefield next.